So what are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.
What's the matter with that cat there?
Must be full of reefer.
Full of reefer?
Yeah, man.
You mean that cat's high?
Sailing.
Sailing?
Lightly.
We now wander off the beaten path with an update from the Reefer Reporter.
Hello and welcome to the Reefer Reporters. It's November the 19th and we are live here at 420radio.ca. I'm Al Graham, your host, and today I'm joined at the desk by Northern Ontario Kim Cooper. Hello, Kim. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good today, Al. A snowy day in Northern Ontario, and the news just keeps on ticking along worldwide as far as cannabis goes.
It sure does. We got stories that touch on driving with cannabis, deliveries, LPs who believe that medibles won't be a medical item.
Lots going off. We're going to start right off here in Canada on a federal level. We're going to start off with something going on in Vancouver.
In Vancouver, yes. Early data suggests that there was no spike in cannabis impaired driving after legalization, according to the police. Canadian police, they say, have not seen a spike in cannabis impaired driving 1 month since legalization.
Yeah. Police forces in Regina, Vancouver, Newfoundland, Labrador, Yukon, Truro, Nova Scotia, Kensington, PEI all said they had not noticed any significant change in driver behavior.
Yeah, in Manitoba, the RCMP there conducted 3 cannabis impaired driving legislation or investigations over a 3-week period. In that same time, they investigated 50 alcohol impaired driving charges.
Yeah, big difference in the numbers there, people. Alcohol-related issues as compared to other intoxicating effects that we could be seeing from stuff like cannabis. The numbers are consistent across the board. Yeah, in Toronto, we've seen the same thing happen. BC Public Services, same thing is going on. Numbers are all astronomically different. 58 drug-impaired instances in the total to date in 2018. Only 2 for cannabis after legalization, compared to 824 alcohol-related incidences in the Metro Toronto area.
Yeah, well, that last year, all of 2017, there were 60 incidents of drug-impaired drivers, and they're saying drugs, so that would include cannabis and probably pharmaceutical drugs as well. And 1,157 instances of alcohol impaired.
So almost 1,100 more.
That
have to do with alcohol. So, I mean, the numbers hold to reason. Cannabis consumers don't drive impaired. We just simply don't, for the most part. There are exceptions to every rule out there, depending on your personality. But on a whole, that stands to be the case even post-legalization.
Yeah, well, in Halifax and the Northwest Territories, there was no cannabis-impaired driving charges.
None.
After,
None.
Yep.
That's all. So, all the big worries and, the big red flags and, the sky is going to fall and mayhem on our roads and people dying on the streets, not happening.
No, it's not. The sky hasn't fallen. There's not all this mass destruction. It seems to be, the cannabis advocate said there's going to be a shorter supply and you're not going to see a bunch of crazy lunatic drivers all of a sudden. The other side said, there would be lots of cannabis, and it's going to be so bad that we got to spend it's going to be mayhem. We got to spend all this money on these machines.
Yeah, mayhem in the streets. Blood. People are dying on the streets. We heard quotes with people saying that. None of that materialized. And lo and behold, we're having shortages, and there is no mayhem. It's kind of falling out the way we said it would.
Sure is. All right. Well, talking about driving, I think the festive season, the police are going to have an extra question or two come the ride checks.
Yeah, some of the ride check stop officers will now be asking, have you consumed any alcohol today? And they will also ask you, when was the last time you enjoyed cannabis? Is a possible scenario.
Yeah, I like how they say that, enjoyed cannabis.
It's hysterical. So you're going to be asked about your consumption habits at ride checks.
Yes.
Now, it's an added question thanks to legalization. They are aware that it is an impairment-causing drug, so they're going to be asking you about your THC habits.
Yeah, I see there. They say that in London, the police there haven't laid any impaired driving charges yet.
No, and they're not even really sure in most places. London, which is where this article is from, is the London Press. So we're focusing on London here. But even there, they're not, they've opted out, I guess, so to speak, in their own terms, to get the Draeger 5000. So they're not going to have an actual drug testing machine to say if somebody is impaired on cannabis and have conclusive testing on that. They'll be relying solely on trained officers doing roadside sobriety testing.
Yeah, I see there that London lawyer Nick Cate has said the same thing that we have said many times, and others as well. It's only tests for consumption, not impairment.
That's right. So police forces across the nation are not trusting the government-approved equipment, and they're opting for officers' knowledge on impairment to guide them through this. I wonder how many of these cases we'll see a courtroom.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I think that,
there's no of any kind except an officer's diagnostic.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I noticed that some of these numbers we're talking about before and after, legalization, and how did they prove it before the Draeger 5000 machine?
Yeah. Well, we'll be largely relying on policemen's intuitive knowledge about impairment and the way we act when we're impaired. But once again, that's a matter of perspective and the time. We've seen it fail badly in the past by people having a stroke and being accused of being drunk. Mm-hmm. So, not a great system.
Okay, now it says that under the federal laws, police have authority to conduct roadside intoxication tests, including oral fluid tests, and it is illegal to drive within 2 hours of being over the legal limit of THC. So once you get below that legal limit of 5 nanograms, let's say you're 4 nanograms, you still have to make sure that it's 2 hours past the time. But how do you know what time that you became below that?
This is just it. They've made these laws, and there's no way to test to find out the results. So the whole thing is just ludicrous. There's these, right down to the point, 2 hours after consumption, you're basically going to have to take Buddy's word for it because there's no way to test. So I don't know how you can put a law into effect that nobody can find out if it's taking place, that you're obeying it.
Yeah, well, I guess there would be some type of challenge, whether it involves the roadside machine or not. But somebody who's going to have a case that the lawyers really like, that they will challenge this with, and it's just only a matter of time.
Oh, the lawyers are lined up waiting for the test case to walk through the door.
Yes. Well, talking about test case, it looks like maybe the province of Saskatchewan might be one of the first ones that gets to test the rights of First Nations in cannabis on reserves.
Yeah, the first one to happen in the central of Canada, Saskatchewan. They're opening up a cannabis store on a reserve. Now, we have them in Ontario already, so this is not new territory for us.
Yeah.
But it is most definitely new territory for Saskatchewan. They're opening up their very first First Nations store that has not been authorized by the Government of Canada and not been given a permit through the new Cannabis Act. It's the first one to open since the Cannabis Act has taken effect and is opened outside the regulations of the Cannabis Act, and it's done so with band approval. So this is pretty epic for Saskatchewan.
Well, their Justice Minister, Don Morgan, he said that the federal government gave each province the responsibility of setting up and enforcing regulations for cannabis retailers, which included the First Nation reserves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he goes on to say it would be our position that somebody setting up one without a provincial license would not be legal, would not be authorized, and he would urge them to stop going ahead with it.
Yeah. I think he's overstepping by encompassing First Nations land into any laws that the government makes in today's world. First Nations are self-governed. They have the right and an Indigenous right to inherent right to grow this plant as part of their ancestor having used this plant throughout their history, the same as anything else that they have inherent right to grow and to produce and to sell. And that's what it falls under. So I think the minister is overstepping his bounds there and maybe needs to take a look further into the laws of where what his reach is allowed to affect.
Well, the group there, I really mess up their name if I tried to say it, but the First Nation Reserve there, they say that in a news release that while it's nice that the minister say what he says, but in the interim we can advise that we are waiting to hear from Canada concerning our request to sit down in the spirit of reconciliation and renegotiate First Nations jurisdiction over cannabis.
Yeah, the Mascapetang First Nation is not happy about Saskatchewan government and their stand on this, and they're saying, no, we're not listening to you. We want to talk to Canada about this, for all First Nations bands that are going to go through this in the future.
Yeah, they're gonna have another one open up as well. So
yeah.
They're
standing their ground under First Nations law and under treaty rights for inherent right, and that's where they stand on it. They feel it's their right to grow their Indigenous crops that was already given as a sovereign treaty nation to be able to make these laws for themselves. And in their view, along with many other First Nations around Canada, they feel that cannabis is included in that right.
Yeah, well, they believe that they're looking at the cannabis as promote their overall community health benefits. You know, the healing properties involved. You know, harm reduction, mental health, pain, all the medicinal value for it as well.
Yeah, cannabis and hemp has been part of their nation throughout history, and it's shown that in historical documents from the times of the settlers coming to this land and settling it. They talked about seeing cannabis plants growing on the shores. So it's part of their nation's heritage, and they have the right to grow it and use the crop as they see fit.
That's right. Well, the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations, they agree. They are standing behind this 100%, and they believe that Indigenous communities have jurisdiction over the cannabis rules.
Yeah, the FSIN Vice Chief David Pratt said that as per Treaty 4, Mascapetang had every right to open their cannabis shop regardless of who granted permits by the provincial government.
Yeah. Our position, he says that our position has always been historically and continues to be that First Nation communities have jurisdiction over the lands and territories, plain and simple.
Yeah.
Treaty 4 was signed by, he says, by numerous bands in 1874.
Yeah. 1874. I mean, it's been around for a long time. The rights are granted in the treaties are something that Indigenous people hold very sacred and dear. And from that document, it spells out their jurisdiction over their lands. And medicine is in that clause.
Yes, that was Treaty Number 6, 1876. It appears to be the band's treaty arguments in the issue, is what they say.
Yeah. They're going to bat for them, and they say, "Yep, we're on it, and we've got your back on this, and we want to hear from the feds."
Yeah, they want to hear from the government of Canada. That's who they speak with.
Yeah,
when it comes to these things,
they don't deal with provincial. Provincial is provincial's arm is beyond. They're beyond the jurisdiction of the provincial government. They deal directly with the federal government and only the federal government. Provincial laws do not encompass native land.
No, that's right. Well, the former Grand Chief of the Manitoba Assembly of Nations, Derek Nipanik, he described the band opening a cannabis shop as an act of self-determination and warned of possible legal troubles should police try to step in. He says Saskatchewan better pay attention to their lawful obligations to Indigenous people, because if they step in and they entrust the RCMP to shut down the facility, there's going to be a legal issue.
Well, provincial justice minister said he wouldn't direct police to enforce the law. Morgan said he didn't want a standoff over the issue and urged communities to abide by provincial regulations that are already in place.
Well,
so I mean, say in him saying, "Oh, just listen to provincial regulations," he's obviously not hearing what these people are saying.
That's right. Yep. He's not, and they're going by what the federal government says, that First Nations follow the provincial things when it comes to cannabis, and First Nations are saying, "Hey, let's talk." Like, we haven't even spoken yet.
Yeah, that's right.
I know the federal government will say, "Well, they spoke to First Nations," but who'd they speak to?
Yeah.
Was that all one voice? It doesn't sound like it to me.
It doesn't sound like it to me. Not enough time was given to each and every individual First Nations band that's out there. They are all different. They are all different people. They live by different laws, and they have different things that they want to live by, and they live their lives according to that. One is not the same as another.
Yeah, exactly. We allow people who have certain religious beliefs to live a certain way of life. This is the way they live. This isn't a religion or anything. This is
life.
Their lifestyle. Yeah, this is their life.
This is their life. And we've given them the right to govern themselves. Allow them to do that.
Yeah. Well, let's hit one more story and then take a break.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about a big issue for a lot of people that is popping up in a lot of people's minds. We've been given the right to legally grow cannabis in Canada for ourselves. Everybody knows every home is allowed 4 plants per household. Wonderful. Let's start growing. Well, the first thing you need to grow is seeds. First thing you need is growing seeds. Exactly. Well, apparently they're not getting out there for people to buy, so people just go to they were going to before. Yeah. Now, is that legal cannabis? That's the big thing. If LPs hold proprietary rights on all things cannabis that are legal in Canada, they're not selling seeds or clones, and cannabis plants pop up all across this great nation of ours. Geez, I wonder where they came from.
I don't know. Well, apparently, while sales right now it's a slumpy time for them. People who have been selling seeds, but with legalization and no other supply, people, why not just go to where they've normally been getting them for years?
Yeah, there's seed companies available online. There are seeds for sale in head shops and garden centers across this great nation of ours.
Yeah.
Every city you go in has some proprietors that have seeds available. There's racks available right in front of you when you go in the store, especially around the beginning of the year when people are planting their seeds prior to getting them ready to go outside.
Well,
so seeds are available normally in abundance, but right now they're a little harder to find.
Well, the stores, they quote a couple of stores here, and they say that sales were up big time. One store says that they've doubled the amount of sales in the seeds alone since legalization.
Yeah. And now they're starting to get tough to find. Stores are selling out.
Yeah. And, sometimes it's maybe they just don't have them, but according to this article, some provinces decided to wait some time until they have seeds because of inventory issues and stuff like that. Yeah.
So we're still, canopy growth, prime example. They weren't focused on launching the seed market at all, because they felt Canadians wouldn't be ready to plant any seeds because we're going into winter.
They say that it is. They want to try to launch the seeds when people are going to plant them.
Do they not know that people grow indoors?
Well, they say that winter is approaching here in Canada, and they just felt that it was wasn't the right time to put them out. People can't put them in the gardens in the middle of winter. Well, hello.
All of their grow facilities are indoor. Why do they think that 4 plants can't be grown inside someone's house?
Yeah, exactly. And the article goes on, talks about on the medical end that the seeds were it doesn't sound like this big seller, maybe 1% of total sales. Well, that was the medical market. Now you got a whole millions of people, 36 million people have legal right, well, unless you're in Manitoba and Quebec, to grow their own cannabis. Your market is just
exploded. And you're not focused on that right now.
No.
Because it's winter in Canada.
Yeah.
People
don't grow indoors.
No, people don't grow indoors. Only Canopy Growth does that.
Yeah, this one it had some funny comments on my Facebook page over this.
Yeah. Seeds and seedlings are huge, and the need is absolutely there. And it's unclear, like at this point, how does law enforcement know an illicit plant from a legal one?
I don't know. That secret hasn't been released. There's all kinds of thoughts and suggestions out there and ideas, but I don't think the real way has been released, because even they know that.
Yeah, And genetics are getting out there. We have on for patients have had access to genetics for a couple of decades now.
Yeah, almost 20 years, 17 years now.
Yeah, so we're into our second decade here. So well into our second decade here. So the genetics are out there and they're available. Now, we've always had coverage under, patients helping patients and that kind of thing, and designated growers. And so seed genetics have been able to be freely passed around amongst patients. My big question is, now with legalization, does that extend to non-patients? Are now patients free to give genetics to anyone?
Well, I sort of look at it, do you lose that right if you become a patient? The same as, do you lose that right to have those 4 plants? Do you lose that right to carry those 30 grams?
Yeah,
and those things you don't. You don't lose those rights.
Exactly. So I think that with that would extend. So now you can give your genetics away freely, since it's no longer an illegal substance that you're gifting And they even have a gifting thing amongst rec users or non-medicinal users. You're allowed to gift your plants and your plant materials that you grow, and you can trade and all of this kind of stuff. You're allowed to do all of that. So that brings genetics in police enforcement. It's an impossibility.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see with these first people who get charged that go to court over this. So, yeah, another one of those court challenges that will be up and coming for sure.
There's going to be a ton of them. Okay,
Kim, medication time.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, this week we're going to hear a cannabis medical news report from CBS on cannabis and menopause. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've had to split it in two, so we're going to hear the first half in this break, and then we're going to hear the second half in the next break. And then after that, and then right after the break, Kim and I will be, after the break, we'll be back after you hear some of a bit of a green dream by the Cotton Mill Kings. You're listening to the Reefer Reporters. We're live here for 420radio.ca.
Hey, this is Cheech. And this is Chong. And you're listening to Lifestyle Radio. What is it? Lifestyle Radio. Say it one more time. 420 Radio? Ooh. Hang up and try again.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
Well, we hear a lot about the benefits of medical marijuana, but now one group is focused on a very specific demographic. Joining us today from Elementa Marin is Sherry Mateo. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
And your group is focused on menopausal women and the benefits of medical marijuana. Why?
Well, because medical marijuana can really be of benefit in perimenopause and menopause. Cannabis can help with things like anti-anxiety, insomnia. It has anti-inflammatory effects, so it can help with chronic pain or just even your basic aches and pains that some of us feel every morning. And it can also help get our endocannabinoid system back into balance. It has cannabinoids in it. Cannabinoids are chemicals that are found naturally in the plant. We have a system in our bodies called the endocannabinoid system. When we're in menopause or perimenopause, our hormones are all out of whack. The endocannabinoid system is thought to be able to helpfully bring us back into balance, even though our hormones are out of balance.
So what do you say to women who say, listen, I'm a grandma. I don't want to walk around high all the time.
So there are many different chemicals in the cannabis plant, and they have different effects. The most famous one is THC. That's the one that's psychotropic, and that's the one that gets you high. But there are other chemicals that are really beneficial to our health. One of them that's also really well known now is CBD, otherwise known as cannabidiol. So for women particularly who don't want to get high, they can choose a high CBD compound, which will not get them high at all. Or if they do want to get some of the benefits from THC, because THC is beneficial in other ways than just being psychotropic, they can do what we call microdosing, which is taking very small amounts throughout the day just to get your system in balance.
Are you looking for cannabis news, education, and people's opinions? Are you looking to learn what Canadian and international cannabis advocates are doing, not only now, but what got them to this point in their lives, and what does the future hold for them? Do you want to learn how patients are using cannabis as a daily medication, or learn how their cannabis use helps them with their medical condition? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then I'm going to suggest to you to tune in to Lifestyle Radio. Catch their live weekly shows and have your questions and concerns answered and find the experience you're looking for. Monday, catch your weekly news broadcast with the Reefer Reporters. Then on Wednesday, get several hours worth of cannabis public education. We get things started with cannabis and coffee with Tamarawana. Finish up your evening with the award-winning Pace Radio Show with Al Graham, and no week would be complete without tuning into Friday night's program, the 420 Radio Show featuring Al Rapp and the 420 Radio crew, Mary Jane Baker and Marcel Gagnac. Cannabis is a lifestyle, and you can catch all your cannabis lifestyle information right here at 420radio.ca. An apple a day won't keep this doctor away, but a gram of cannabis may keep you away from the doctor. Find out how by tuning into The Higher Estate with Dr. Ira Price, Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, only here at 420radio.ca. reeferreport.ca. Tune in to DJ Passion from the land of Ganja, the island of Jamaica, when he comes to you live every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on 420radio.ca.
You cannot drown. Kung Pai, I will not die. Tell him I'm coming, tell him I'm prime. Tell him all about a rap chop shop for the man inside. He really ain't fine. Keep a lot of my thumb, keep a lot of water to the pot divine. We are not over the cause, we are not over the fight. We are not over the populace, we will continue to fly. Fuck them for taking my green dream. Fuck them for killing my high. Spin up another and tell me the reason again why the weed is a lifeblood. I am in love with the herb, burning up only the nice blood.
Stay up in the quadrants with dogs when I'm the leashes. So I guess you could call this my thesis. Smoking on the same strains, probably is Jesus. Cause the herbs from the earth, I proudly pledge my allegiance. In my green dreams, I see us as equal, we're all the same. But real life perpetuates the wrong in every man. And so it keeps changing this thing that we call life. And so I keep smoking just to get high.
You're listening to the Reefer Reporters. We are live here at 420radio.ca. We are back from a medication break. I'm ready to bring you another segment of cannabis news. Well, Kim, what do you think? Get right back at it?
Get right back at it. We're going to start off in a little town in southern Ontario.
Yes, little town called Beckworth, Ontario. They've got a pile of people down there that are pissed right off.
They most certainly do. They convened a meeting over the situation and everything. And all of this because of a little tiny grow-up.
That's right. Burnstown Farms Cannabis Company's proposed an outdoor cannabis farm on rural land outside just south of Carlton Place. And, people are upset. Like, as they say, it's a bit of a farm area, and people showed up at this meeting, which tells you that people are concerned.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of not in my backyard attitude going on.
Oh, yes.
Little rural area, that's for sure. It's about growing some plants on a farm, the same as any other farm operation that's going on in this rural community. Should think that they would be inviting some fresh blood and some fresh tax dollars into the area, but not quite so.
No, well, according to one local fellow there, he said that they poured their life savings into their property to buy this house, their house, and he's worried now that it has a cannabis farm nearby. What's that going to affect his property values?
I don't think it's going to do anything to his property values. No, and jumping to the conclusion that it will is just more reefer madness propaganda. There's no indication at this point that any cannabis-related industry is going to do anything at all to Canadian property values at this point, especially if every home has 4 plants.
Yeah, well, they say this is going to be a big farm. It's an outdoor farm. How are they going to control the smell and odor?
Well, they're not going to be able to control the smell of odor, and they're not going to be able to control the smell and odor of an industrial curry factory either. But they still exist.
Well, according to the Reeve down there, Richard Kidd, he says, well, there's municipal bylaws to restrict the operations in size-wise. There's nothing that the municipality can do to stop it.
Yeah, it's going to carry on. There was some fears of, them opening up, some sort of a shop there as well, this and that and the other thing. Some kind of a spa was proposed, but none of that is taking place. It's simply a farm area for this company, which has other facilities off-site.
Yeah, well, Mr. Kidd says the problem is the federal government's made it legal. The province has said that they can grow it, and our zoning is proper. So he says they don't have anything to matter to say. And if they meet all the zoning things, then there's nothing that's illegal to prevent it. Then, like they say, they can, as that counselor said, they can go ahead and do it.
Yeah, they can go ahead and do it. There's absolutely nothing to stop them. They're only using 12 acres out of the 50 acres that they own. We're talking about 12 acres. On a farm level, I can tell you, living in northern Ontario, in farm country, 12 acres is what the plot that people put their houses on, and then they farm the 100 that's attached to that. 12 acres is nothing in the grand scheme of things.
It just happens that Beckworth has opted out of the provincial private cannabis sales.
Big surprise. Big surprise. Beckwith doesn't want pot stores. Big surprise there. Given the reception for this commercial use of this farmland, I am not surprised by that at all.
Just anti-cannabis.
Yeah, just an anti-cannabis town. Beckwith, Ontario.
Yeah, well, talking about cannabis, and even though you opt out, your residents can still purchase it from the OCS if they'd like, so they can still get cannabis or go to the town next door to them and has it. So it's not going to stop the consumption there. And talking about the OCS, I see they say that their cannabis deliveries are back on track after the delays.
Yeah, according to the latest press release from the OCS, all is well at the large warehouse operation that is supplying Ontarians across the board with their cannabis. Right now, it's the only way for Ontario to get their cannabis, and for people in places like Beckwith, it will be the only way for them to get it in the future as well. So it's good to hear that they say things are back on track, but I have to question how they can make that statement while we still have a postal strike ongoing.
Well, I'm sure they're not claiming, that they're blaming the post office, for not being able to get, deliveries to people in town. That's all part of the blame game. But yeah, they said they put out 220,000 orders. The OCS did, and I'm sure they're sitting in one of those several hundred container trucks, trailers that are parked at many different postal distribution stations across the country.
Yeah, waiting to be unloaded and sorted and shipped out to awaiting customers from a coast to coast to coast. A lot of people are ordering. I'm surprised, really. I knew a lot of people would order on the onset. I thought it would have petered out by now a little bit, but I guess they're still getting quite a few orders in.
Right, yeah. Well, we'll see. Yeah, we just have to see, with all this is all in the news now as far as the order side. I don't know if we'll be hearing about orders down the road because people, maybe they'll get things straightened out. The strike will be over and everything will work properly so people get their orders. But I think once those stores open up, people are just going to come in and go because people don't like using credit cards online. You have problems and you can have problems with that when it comes to going across the border.
Oh, big issues.
And other things. So, yeah, privacy stuff.
Yeah, big issues with the credit card only. Many people aren't placing orders with the OCS because of the regulations with just credit card only. Has to be a registered credit card, too. Can't be a debit, can't be anything like that. Yeah. It's got to be a real credit card that somebody can keep track of. So that kind of deer in the headlights look when somebody says that, right?
So the OCS can say that they're back on track, but unfortunately, we'll never know the truth until the strike is over.
Yeah, once the strike is over, we'll much more numbers will come out at that point as well, and I think we'll see a change in pace, but we'll keep an eye on the situation. In the meantime, Ontario government is making some details known.
Yes, right. They released the regulations for the licensing and operation of private cannabis stores. So you won't have to worry about a strike.
Yeah. You'll have a store to go to in 5 short months. April the 1st is the day that they've chosen to open up the first shops.
That's right. The regulations establish a minimum distance of 150 meters. That's approximately 500 feet, or a third of a kilometer, between cannabis retail stores and schools, including private and federally funded First Nation schools that are off reserve.
Yeah, and of course the purpose of all of that is to keep our kids safe.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
But so as far as the application process for private cannabis retail stores, licenses will begin on December the 17th. And we'll be ready with laws and regulations to protect the youth and children and stuff like that.
Yeah. December the 17th, just before everybody goes on Christmas holidays. What a wonderful time to get some paperwork started.
Okay. That's right. Get it ready before then, because the paperwork is available at the website.
Yeah, you can get that now. It is available now, so go get your. If you're interested in getting in on this retail market, all of the details are being laid out. We don't
know if you're going to have any supply. We don't know if you're going to have anything to put in your store.
That's right. And the people that we see with stores that are operating so far in other provinces are down to operating, 3 and 4 days a week, limited half days. Some are closing their doors altogether because there's just not enough cannabis to sell.
Well, some of these new regulations are retailers will not be permitted to allow anyone under the age of 19 to enter the store. It's a risk to youth exposure. Okay.
How many kids do we see walk in the liquor store with their parents? Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Specific instances in which applicants will be denied license include cannabis-related criminal offenses, notably illegal cannabis retailers who are operating after October the 17th are not eligible for a sales license here in Ontario.
Yep. So if you've got a store operating and you want in, you better close the doors.
Yeah, if you're ever connected to organized crime, forget it. You're out too. Yeah. Let's see. You have to be a standalone store.
Yep.
Okay. Now, some people say, is that a store by itself, or can that be a store in a mall?
No, it's a store by itself, I believe.
Some people believe a standalone store means it's just cannabis, that it can't be alcohol.
Oh, could be.
I don't know. Yeah.
We're going to have to look into that.
Yes. Individual store authorization. Cannabis retail managers and all retail employees will be required to complete the approved training to ensure that any individual who works in the cannabis retail market is trained in the responsible sale of cannabis. So there's going to be a training for them. Yeah. It'd be like quick.
You got to go and take your Smart Serve.
Smart Serve. Bud Serve.
Okay.
Let's see. Quick facts. Let's see. The government has consulted with municipalities, indigenous communities, law enforcement. We know that. Public health advocates, businesses, and consumers groups, as well as representatives from provinces to create the new regulations.
There we go. Okay. Yeah, the private retail store model, it'll be tightly regulated and strictly enforced by the AGCO, establishing a zero-tolerance approach for any retailer who provides cannabis for anyone under the age of 19.
Yes, and as we mentioned, applications can start going in as of December the 17th. You can start selling on April the 1st, and the government has committed to provide $40 million over 2 years to help municipalities with the implementation costs of recreational cannabis legalization.
I kind of like this. A market concentration limit of 75 stores per operator has been set to prevent high degree of market consolidation, promote opportunities for small business, and promote investment in the cannabis retail sector. So we're not going to see a Walmart of stores.
No. But 75 stores for one owner.
That's a lot. That's still
a lot of stores.
Lot. That's still a lot.
And there are new hours of operation, which the cannabis stores, as well as the new hours for alcohol, will be from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Yeah, I love that it was the hours that came out for cannabis, and everybody that consumed alcohol screamed and said, "What? They got more hours than us, so they increased the alcohol." I love it.
They will allow those times to be flexible, but for example, a small town with 500 people in it, will
You're gonna close early.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're going to close early. But small towns are used to that. We have abbreviated hours for everything.
So, those are some of the things that you need to know in order to get things rolling.
Yeah, I mean, looking at entrepreneurial spirit in the country and on Ontario on this one particular, like we're looking at new frameworks now and where you could possibly fit in, and that includes events.
Yes, it does include events. This is going to be a hot topic. Okay, it does include events, and that's in British Columbia. They are not going to give out special event permits like they do for beer gardens. There's not going to be any cannabis gardens allowed at special events.
No special permits for cannabis, not for you cannabis smokers in BC. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, because party planners across the country and promoters and festival promoters are integrating cannabis into their existing events that are taking place, and they're creating weed-themed events across the planet as well. New stuff is happening all the time that are cannabis-related events and cannabis-based events. So the incorporation of consumption, now that it's legal, has to be put in to these existing events and brand new events that are being thought up. To think that you wouldn't be given a permit to do a cannabis-themed event, and you would be able to do the same event if it was beer-themed.
Now, according to Nate Sabine, Director of Business Development for Blueprint Events, they say that they are very disappointed, but they're not surprised. They go on to say it's something that we on our side of the industry certainly want. They said they've been approached by many clients who are looking at hosting cannabis-focused events, and they want to be involved in this.
Yeah, they want to be part of the up-and-coming culture that's going to be exploding out there. I mean, the culture has existed on an underground level for many, many years, and now it's going mainstream. And people like Blueprint know that. We're waiting once again for government to catch up.
Yeah, Dimitri Demirs of Tomik Productions. He says that it seems a little bit odd to legalize it and then ban it from public situations. Well, there are provinces that have banned public consumption of cannabis.
Yeah, and there are some that aren't banning.
That's
public
right.
consumption.
Yeah, we have.
We're lucky in Ontario with that.
They're not even going. We'll get into that in a second here. They're not even going to allow lounges.
Yeah, no lounges, no special lounges, no nothing. And I mean, there's already lounges there. So are they just going to make them close their doors now? I don't know.
Well,
Now, are they and are they specifically talking about lounges like out and about around city, or are these just lounges at events?
They're talking about lounges at events. You go to the Lift Expo in Toronto, downtown Toronto. You go in there and you there's a vapor lounge there.
That's right.
Would not be allowed in the province of British Columbia.
And it wasn't at the last Lift either. There was no vaporing, no vape area at Lift in BC.
Oh, in BC, really? There wasn't in Toronto.
No, there wasn't. And we did have that in Toronto. So I think this is as we said, this is in BC. So this isn't across the country or anything like that. So this is only applying so far to BC. And this is their heavy hand with legalization.
Now to keep in mind here, we've only got so much time in the show, but Kim and I had a big discussion about this before we came live on the air. And that was, what do you do, for example, here in Ontario? Okay, you go to an event, there's no, say there's no cannabis lounge or cannabis garden there. But in Ontario, we're allowed to consume cannabis wherever you can consume tobacco.
That's right. We're under the Smoke-Free Ontario Act here. If there is tobacco consumption is allowed, you're allowed to consume cannabis in that area. And I know at event spaces, as little as 2 years ago, we're doing the same kind of a protocol. I know that firsthand as being a patient. I consumed at the Ozzy Osbourne concert when Black Sabbath played at the Molson Amphitheater. And I showed them my bong, which was plastic, so it wasn't glass, so it didn't go against their glass regulations. And I showed them my container of medication from an LP with my prescription label on it, and they let me in with it. And they said, make sure you only smoke wherever is a designated smoking area. So I went where the smokers were, and I did my bongs. and it was fine, right?
But what I say is, if it's on private property, it's a whole different issue.
Could be, but I would challenge that under Smoke-Free Ontario. I would challenge that I would challenge it as my right as a patient for sure. But as a non-patient consumer,
you're on private property.
You still can fight that under
Smoke-Free Ontario. Smoke-Free Ontario only falls on public land and the private land. If an owner wants you to be allowed to smoke cigarettes, that's up to him. If a person wants to allow you to smoke cannabis on private property, or they don't,
I think
that's their right to say. They own the spot.
I would do it anyway, I think. And if I couldn't challenge it under Smoke-Free Ontario, then I would definitely challenge it under the Discriminatory Act, because you're discriminating against cannabis. If smoking of something else is already allowed, smoking of another legal product should be as well. Otherwise, you're being discriminatory practice. So I would argue it.
It's what it would have to be. It would have to be an argument. But as I pointed out to you, hospitals.
Yeah. But they don't have a smoking area, right? So anything with
they do. It's right over there. It's on the other side of that property line.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, but mind you, hospitals are under provincial jurisdiction. So
yeah.
Okay.
No festival lounges or smoking areas.
Like I can remember, going to, as I mentioned, I've gone to the Molson Amphitheater. I've gone to concerts. If you leave, that gate, some places don't allow you back in. If they have that right to not allow you to consume cannabis on their property at their event, and you have to leave to consume it, and you're not allowed back in.
Well, see, that's why I'm
looking at it as a recreational consumer, not as a medical consumer. But
but that's why I have this big giant mouth of mine.
Okay, let's do one more story here, and then we can discuss that last one more over break.
All right, sounds good. Speaking of a big giant mouth, insert foot here. Once again, we have our LP executives in this country sticking their foot in it and not really knowing a damn thing about the cannabis industry and market today.
Yes. Bruce Litton of Canopy Growth. He says, I don't know that Canada is going to be big edibles market. Excuse me?
He was responding from an outgoing Brockville Mayor Henderson during the Leeds Greenville Economic Development Summit in Kempville. And he said, in the U.S., criminals make things like gummy bears and chocolates with that cannabis oil in it. They are really ugly, colored stuff that tastes bad. If you're a criminal, it's really hard to spend a lot of money on technology, on an amazing system, because if the cops bust you, you lose all your tech.
And he goes on to say, what does he go on to say?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to ever have gummy bears in Canada, he concluded.
Now, I think Mr. Linton needs to go to one of these markets that happen across the country. The Canada Crawls, these All he has to do is look south of the border. What happened down in Colorado? They got swamped with the demand of edibles. I couldn't believe the sales.
This year's Karma Cup Kit, largest category out of over 110 products, largest category was edibles. Mm-hmm. Overall mass product was edibles. And quality of edibles, oh, please. It was amazing.
Well, he believes that instead of gummy bears and nice treats from places like so fucking good bakery there, that he anticipates people will want to drink a cannabis beverage that can be vaporized or used medicinally.
Oh, so now we're vaping our drinks? This guy really has no clue. Was he drunk? I mean, everything that he said is nonsensical. He obviously has no clue. How can he be the head of a cannabis corporation?
Yeah. He says that the regulator in every province has a liquor authority. Have you ever been to a liquor store that sold anything that wasn't shelf-stable beverage? That's liquor store, liquor authorities. They're not looking for crazy, let's have a gummy bear aisle.
He has no clue. He has no clue. The edible industry in Canada is one of the largest booming industries right now and fastest growing industries that we have. Edibles is what everybody wants and everybody is gravitating towards because of the smoking restrictions and the use restrictions that we're facing everywhere. Everybody wants edibles and tinctures, drops and lotions and potions and bath bombs. Nobody wants your pre-rolled dupes.
He says the other problem is the uneven active ingredient levels in gummies. Goes on to say, I think people prefer certainty. You don't walk into a liquor store and say, how strong is the vodka today? You want to be the same, every time. Well, products are supposed to be tested. Products are supposed to be labeled. Products are supposed to be labeled with how much milligrams there is, and we're all hearing about this 10 milligram limit. What's he worried?
We already have that.
Yet again, something else that just doesn't make sense.
Exactly. It exists now. We have companies out there that have been in production for many years that I use on a regular basis because they have stable dosed meds. They have quality meds that are made in a professional manner, with following all of Health Canada standards, with professional grade equipment, and nobody's worried about getting busted. That's the least of their worries right now. I mean, the industry is already there, they don't even see it.
No, that's right, exactly. It's already there. There's so many people who are looking for an alternative way. Yes, I believe beverages will be big, but people will also eat as well. Yeah,
that's right. The beverages are already getting big in the illicit or the gray market, whatever you choose to call it. They've been getting big for the last 1.5 to 2 years, actually longer than that in the grand scheme of things.
They're making brownies in the 60s.
Yeah, Mary's Tea has come huge. It's now Mary's Medicinals. I mean, she's an amazing extract artist when it comes to beverages and in the tea market. I mean, it's already there. It's already there, and they need to catch up. I am so tired of waiting for them.
Yeah. Well, time we're tired. I think it's time for us to take another medication break.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, Kim and I will be right back after our session. Meanwhile, the listeners will hear more about the CBS report on cannabis and menopause, and we're back when you hear more of that Cottonmouth song, Green Dreams. You're listening to the Reefer Reporters live here at 420radio.ca.
So what are you doing? Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
Do you need a prescription from a doctor, or should you work with a doctor before experimenting with this, specifically for menopause?
That's a really excellent question, and it's quite frankly a difficult one to answer. It would be great if doctors and nurses could give us more advice about the endocannabinoid system, but the truth of the matter is this was only discovered in the 1980s and so has not been taught in nursing or medical schools.
Now, another concern for some, especially considering the air quality we're experiencing, is inhaling smoke. We know that smoke is a carcinogen. Do folks who use medical marijuana for these purposes need to actually smoke it?
No, absolutely not. Cannabis is available in so many different forms at this point. You can have tinctures, you can have edibles, you can smoke or you can vape, and vaping and smoking are slightly different. The reason why people smoke cannabis is because in the raw plant itself, THC is not present. THC is present in a precursor form. It doesn't become THC, the psychoactive component, until it's heated to a certain temperature. So smoking it heats it, turns it into the psychoactive component, which makes you high. So depending upon how the marijuana is used, it can either get you high or not. And remember, there are over 100 cannabinoids in cannabis, and each one of them, we're just beginning to find the different effects that they can have.
How interesting. Well, certainly a lot to learn, and you guys have a gathering coming up in the Bay Area.
Yes, we have gatherings every month, and we have them throughout the Bay Area. We have one on November 28th, which is Wednesday night, at 7 o'clock at Neighborly. That one is actually in San Francisco.
Okay.
And then I have one in Marin on the same night at Yoga Works Larkspur Landing, and I'm going to be talking about yoga and meditation and cannabis.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We learned a lot about cannabis and medical marijuana. Thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Are you looking for cannabis news, education, and people's opinions? Are you looking to learn what Canadian and international cannabis advocates are doing? Not only now, but what got them to this point in their lives, and what does the future hold for them? Do you want to learn how patients are using cannabis as their daily medication, or learn how their cannabis use helps them with their medical condition? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then I'm going to suggest to you to tune in to Lifestyle Radio. Catch their live weekly shows and have your questions and concerns answered and find the experience you're looking for. Monday, catch your weekly news broadcast with the Reefer Reporters. Then on Wednesday, get several hours worth of cannabis public education. We get things started with Cannabis and Coffee with Tamarawana. Finish up your evening with the award-winning Pace Radio Show with Al Graham, and no week would be complete without tuning into Friday night's program, the 420 Radio Show featuring Al Rapp and the 420 Radio crew, Mary Jane Baker and Marcel Gignac. Cannabis is a lifestyle, and you can catch all your cannabis lifestyle information right here at 420radio.ca. An apple a day won't keep this doctor away, but a gram of cannabis may keep you away from the doctor. Find out how by tuning into The Higher Estate with Dr. Ira Price, Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, only here at 420radio.ca. Tune in to DJ Passion from the land of Ganja, the island of Jamaica, when he comes to you live every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on 420radio.ca. Okay, we're back from another medication session, and we are the Reefer Reporters, and we are live right here at 420radio.ca. Well, Kim, we've got one more new segment to go.
One last segment. We're going to go a little bit international, go start south of the border down in US of A.
It looks like the rest of our stories are all international ones. Yes, we're off to Las Vegas to apparently, they're going to expand, talking about events. It's so big down there that they're expanding the trade show.
Yeah, MJ BizCon took place just this past weekend. Several people in the cannabis community from Canada attended that event this past weekend. Several past guests on the show. Julie Shirillo was there. I think Sean was there from Chronic Canvas as well.
Did Amy go there?
I think Amy was there as well. Yeah. And so was this week's Pace Radio show guest, Robert Laurie, activist lawyer Robert Laurie was also there. So we'll get a chance to catch up with him about this year's MJ BizCon conference in Vegas. But apparently it was so busy, they think it deserves 7 days instead of 3.
Yeah, well, that's great if you can expand to 7 days and keep people coming through the door.
Yeah,
according
to the news release, organizers and local officials chose to make the change after seeing how many people are now attending the annual conference. Extending the length of the event will allow for even more activity and could draw even more visitors, they think.
Not only that, they are also moving the event from mid-November to mid-December.
Yeah.
It's scheduled for December the 9th to the 13th next year.
And I understand the change in that because not much happens around Christmas time at least in the past. Vegas has changed a lot, I got to say. In the last 20 years has changed a lot. So I'm only going by in the past. It could be different now. But historically, Vegas is not a very happy place around Christmas time because not very many people are actually from there. So most people were missing family. But things has changed a lot in the cities that is just alive with everything.
Yeah.
But, so that may be different now, but it's usually a down week at the beginning of December. So it would bring more visitors to the city during a time that they don't usually have very many.
Yeah, well, they said that event organizers expect more than 25,000 people in attendance, and that it's a 137% increase.
Yeah, that's huge. Legalization in Canada, legalization throughout various states in the United States, Uruguay, Mexico, everybody is talking legalization in one country or another. They're either doing legalization on a medical level or they're doing it full-on legalization for everybody. But they're all talking about it now. So it is the new industry.
It is a new industry. And, being, the new industries, they get their trade shows just like all the other industries. And I can remember years ago, there was no such thing like this, and being involved with Treating Yourself magazine and going to trade shows with the magazine where they, and it wasn't a cannabis trade show, it was like furniture and stuff like that. And there's this little cannabis booth in there, right? Well, now we got our own.
Yeah, now there's trade shows dedicated to it. And this year's MJ BizCon was spread out across 175,000 square feet of exhibit space with over 1,000 companies exhibiting there. That's enormous. There was representatives from visitors from all 50 states were covered there, as well as 60 different countries. That's huge numbers.
It's huge, yeah, and it will grow as legalization takes hold, and as especially if the federal government down there ever, gets their act in gear, and legalizes it. So, alrighty,
big numbers for MJ BizCon and increase, and then from there we're going on to Detroit, is it?
Yes, we're heading up to the Michigan area where communities are rebelling against the cannabis businesses.
I lost it.
Yes, did you? Okay, well, in Michigan voted, they approved cannabis legalization, but several communities have indicated they intend to ban commercial, recreational cannabis facilities within their borders.
This has been big problem apparently that we were blissfully unaware of in Colorado too, right?
Yes. Actually, we're talking about here in Ontario, people can opt out of having retail stores, but here they, opt out of banning commercial places. And in Colorado, 75% of the communities opted out of commercial industries.
Wow.
75%. Yeah, I didn't realize
that's a lot, right?
It's a lot. That's a big chunk of a province or a big chunk of a state.
Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, our focus is, I guess, always being on the ones that allowed it. in the bigger cities and everything that have all of the pot shops and so forth going on and all the dispensaries that are available there. We never really focused on how many said no.
Yeah, and they're talking commercial, and they're not even talking retail here.
Yeah. So 75%, that's a big number. So the same thing's going on there.
Yeah, they say here, unlike the opt-in with medical cannabis industry, communities wishing to avoid recreational cannabis shops must opt out by passing an ordinance or persuading voters to approve a ballot initiative signaling their unwillingness to participate in the marketplace.
Wow. And then the problem is you have to wait until the next voting cycle to get back in. So that's 4 years, right?
Yeah. So commercial industry, they must be talking retail then as well.
Yeah. So you have to wait 4 years to get back in. So you can't change your mind next year.
Correct. Yeah. You can opt out, but it's not going to stop it from being in the community.
I mean, opting out of the economic benefits of it is not going to stop consumption in your area. People will just go outside of your area, make their purchases, and bring them home and to their workspaces and so forth. It's going to be there. Saying no to sales does nothing.
They say that there's options for them. Options include businesses contain a local license in addition to a state license. Restrictions are on like public signage, limit on the hours and locations of the businesses. A fee of up to $5,000 for administration costs. I think that's quite a lot less than what ours is here.
Yeah.
And communities cannot ban cannabis transportation through their municipalities.
Yeah. So just because you opt out, no trucks can drive through here. You're not going to have a petition of people up there saying, no, we banned it. You can't drive through.
Yeah. They say currently 108 of more than 1,700 communities in Michigan have opted into the medical cannabis industry.
Well, that's better. Better numbers.
Yeah.
More encouraging for sure. Encouraging for sure. So we'll have to keep an eye on what's going on in good old Michigan.
Yeah. This opting in and opting out stuff.
Yeah. I mean, you're if it's not bad enough that we have a patchwork, whether it's a state or a province, it's a patchwork across North America. There's no blanket theme, no matter which side of the border you're on, north or south. Even with legalization on a federal level in Canada, we still have the same patchwork. So segregating it even more regionally, good Lord.
Yeah, they say here that in Livingston County, the village of Peninkney, the leaders voted Monday to opt out of the commercial adult use of the cannabis market after hearing from the community's attorney. The conversation was, it's better to opt out now while the whole process is being created by the state, and you can always opt in later. So you're like 4 years later.
Yep. Which means you've completely missed the boat. Well, yeah. Well, it's just life.
Yeah, it's life. Okay, well, that's good to know. Let's head off to South Africa.
South Africa. Cannabis ruling down there is having some effects.
Yes. Let's see. It's getting a spotlight in South Africa because of a landmark constitutional court ruling, which still needs to be translated into law that allows South Africans to legally grow and consume their own cannabis at home.
Yeah. You're allowed to. The growing is the big thing for them. It's a huge ruling. It's a landmark ruling there. And it follows many others that have taken place across that continent in recent past. And it's mirroring many of them. As long as it's for your private consumption within your home, they don't want to be called about it.
Yeah, they forbid stealing in cannabis products, meaning if you don't already have it, you can't buy it or sell it.
Yeah. You got to make it yourself. You can grow it yourself. You can use it yourself, but no industry.
Yeah. Yep, they seem to be like there's talk here about this fella here who's brewing batches of cannabis-infused beer. Okay, right after the court ruling, but it seems to be he's brewing it with hemp. Yeah, it is hemp infused.
It's hemp infused. At his family's distillery to celebrate the victory in the spirit of the plant. But if it was infused with THC indica or THC sativa, full strength cannabis, then we'd have a problem, I think, with that.
Yes, that's right. But, the change in law, the government Department of Trade and Industry is now studying the economic potential for the plant. They believe the cannabis industry can help address South Africa's severe unemployment rates. Oh, look at that. Another one saying jobs.
Jobs, money, jobs, industry. Money is always at the root of making them change your mind. This is a small step for South Africa, but it's a great first step. We've all got to take those baby steps somewhere, and this first one will advance, I'm sure, after they see the need. Okay, well, so many people can't grow themselves, but they want to use it as a medicine. Then that will allow for somebody else to do it for them. Eventually, that'll be brought forward, and it'll advance in that manner slowly. But they got to start somewhere, and this is a great start.
As they say here, you like this, because if they can get the THC included in there, because they say that they think that the cosmetic potential in cannabis is enormous. They go on to say that they talk about bath bombs.
Yeah.
They want people, everything including bath bombs to tattoos to hair products.
Yeah.
That has huge potential. So.
Yeah, absolutely, and it all does, and that's what it comes down to. It's a medicine. It's a medicine first and foremost, and most people can trace it back in their histories where it was used by your indigenous people from wherever you're from. Cannabis products were used in your healing products throughout history. So, I mean, it's been part of our lives forever. We just have to reintroduce it.
Yeah, the inherited rights.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's head to our last story of the show.
Sure, sounds good to me. We're going to head right over to Greece. Greece is jumping on the bandwagon.
That's right. Yeah.
We've got the Greeks in on it.
Yep, as it says, Greece eyes pot of gold. As medicinal cannabis is licensed over there. They've issued the first license to private companies for growing medicinal cannabis in the country. Yeah,
very first one. Awesome, excellent. They plan to do lots over there.
Yeah, well, Greece legalized cannabis for medicinal use last year, and in March lifted a ban on growing and producing it. 2 licenses were granted on Monday, and another 12 will be issued by the end of the year.
Fantastic news for Greece. They're saying that they're looking at the future for enterprise and getting stuff started there, for growing for internationally as well. And Canada is mentioned there.
And just so you know, this is all about medical. They got no plans for recreational. They're not even under consideration.
No, not at all. It's not on their radar. They're only interested in medical.
Yeah, and they figured it's going to be about another 12 to 18 months before any product hits the shelves or is available.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's good. Another country. Several countries, including Britain, Germany, Italy, and Denmark, already allow prescription of medical cannabis. In June, Canada became the second country in the world after they were going to legalize it. So, there are more people getting on board.
Yeah, more
Canada
and more
being
countries
mentioned
across the globe. Canada's being, one of the countries that they're looking at exporting to, because Canada has apparently shown interest in other countries growing for us because of our large market that we have here that has opened up. And I mean, that supplying a market like Canada opens the eyes of the people that, I mean, if they're in charge of growing for us, they've got to be looking at that saying, well, why are we exporting this? Why aren't we selling it here? And it comes into play eventually.
It does.
And it just spreads.
Yeah. Well, under this licensing system, medical cannabis products will be available on prescriptions, but it would not be subsidized through a state health insurance plan.
Yeah.
So same thing as what we're getting here in Canada. Yeah. SFO.
Yeah, they're saying, no, we're not paying it. No, we're not paying for it. You want to do that, then it's considered, whatever, you can call it holistic medicine, whatever you want, but we're not paying for it. That's changing a little bit in Canada. We've got a couple of companies that are now offering it as a plan to a company to adopt, but most companies are not adopting it as part of their plan. And so even though it's available doesn't mean you're going to get it.
And the dollar amounts and conditions that are required are really restricted too.
Yes, very much.
Yeah,
very much.
$1,500 for a year, that's like a month's prescription for the average.
Yeah, because of the cost that the LPs are charging. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, Kim, well, looks like we're done for another week.
One more week in the bag. Busy week. More to come, I'm sure.
That's right. Who's our guest this week on the Pace Radio Show?
This week we have a lawyer, I just said it, Robert Laurie. Robert Laurie.
Okay, just thought I'd get that in there. Okay.
Cannabis lawyer, Robert Laurie.
In closing, we'd like to say thank you for listening to the Reefer Reporters Reefer Report. If you enjoyed it, please share it just like you would a tray of infused treats. Until next time, educate, medicate, and do not incarcerate.
I'll catch you later.
So what are you doing? Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.